Hi, this is Natalie Hoffman of FlyingFreeNow.com, and you're listening to the Flying Free Podcast, a support resource for women of faith looking for hope and healing from hidden emotional and spiritual abuse. Welcome to episode 81 of the Flying Free Podcast. Today I have with me Daphne and Rachel, and we're going to introduce you to Daphne. She's actually been on the podcast in the past, but it's been quite a while ago. So we're going to do introductions in just a minute. And I want to first of all say too that our topic for today is going to be on the subject of forgiveness. And I was going to sing that one song. Who sings that song? Forgiveness. Even if, okay, we'll sing. You don't love me anymore. Who sings that song? Does anybody know? Nobody knows.
Do a quick Google. I've heard it, but it's not coming to my mind.
Okay, well, all of you, the people listening are all shouting the name, while they're driving or whatever. But I have no idea.
I wish we could hear you.
So anyway, before we get started on our topic, though, I want to let you know that the sisterhood group is it's called the Flying Free Sisterhood Education and Support Group. It's opening back up again at the end of September. That's just in a few weeks. And you can hop on the waiting list by going to joinflyingfree.com. And you know what I've been hearing more and more from people, you guys? And I think it's because there's so much, over the course of several years, there's so many resources that I've put out there that people, like the podcast, we're going to hit 100 episodes by the end of this year, you guys.
Wow.
That's a lot. There's the podcast. There's tons of articles on the Flying Free website. I'm starting to do these Monday morning things where I connect with people on Facebook and then I post it on YouTube. And so there's all these resources that are out there, and a lot of people are thinking, well, gee, I'm getting a lot of really good stuff. Why do I need to join the Flying Free Sisterhood? It's probably just going to be, all of this good stuff packaged in a nice package with a bow on it, and I don't really want to pay for that. But do you know what I'm hearing from people that think that prior to joining the sisterhood and then they join the sisterhood? They are coming back to me and saying, I had no idea that it was going to be, that there was so much more that was offered within that group. And it's incredible and it's life-changing. And so I'm just offering that out to those of you who are getting a lot of benefit from the podcast and the articles and the YouTube videos, that it's very different on the outside than it is. And it's everything that I can offer you for those of you who can't afford to be in the sisterhood. But if you can't afford to pay $25 a month, there is so much more rich material inside of the sisterhood that's built up in a vault over the years, plus new stuff that's being produced every single month for your benefit. And also the other aspect of it is that you get to have community with other people who are just like you. And the other thing is that you get access to me. You can process what you're personally going through with me in the forum and through coaching that I do every single week. And so, and I get a lot of emails from people asking for help and telling me their stories. And I love that. And I want to help everyone, but I do have to constrain myself to the women that are in that sisterhood group. And I give all of myself to those women. So if you want extra help and you need that systematic process of walking yourself through, going from crawling to flying, from the caterpillar stage to the butterfly stage, I really would encourage you to try out the Flying Free Sisterhood. A lot of women start off with 1 month, and then they come back and they sign up for a whole year because they just are like, this is exactly what I need, and I'm committed to this, and I'm going to go through this whole program. Okay, so that said, I want to reintroduce you to Daphne, and I think I'm going to have her tell us in her own words, who is Daphne?
Hey y'all, so that might give you the first clue. I'm from Texas. So, of course, I have to lead with that. I have been in the Flying Free Sisterhood for about a year and a half now, and have been divorced for about a year from an emotionally and spiritually abusive man, Christian man. And so the group has definitely given me a lot of support during this time. I am also a legal aid attorney, so that's what I do professionally. So yeah, anything else you think is helpful?
No, well, just that if they want to hear you and I dialoguing in the past, we went to the conference last fall that was put on by the Southern Baptist Convention. Correct?
Yes. Yeah, that's right. Yeah. So we did that episode back in October.
Yeah. So Daphne and I got to actually see each other. It was super fun. We've actually seen each other a few times now in different places and conferences, but they're always down in Texas. But then it gives me a chance to leave Minnesota and go stay somewhere warm. But anyway, so we saw each other there. We hung out. We took in the conference, and then we had a lot of thoughts about it. And so we downloaded in a podcast episode. I don't even remember the number of that episode, but if you look,
it was a bonus episode, I think.
Well, that's right. It was a bonus episode.
Bonus episode 1, maybe?
Okay, yeah, because I think we've only had 2 bonus episodes. So it shouldn't be too hard to find. But anyway, so you can go check that out if you want to. And yeah, but let's
go ahead. Well, I was going to say quickly, I also share more of my story with Natalie in the butterfly story in the private sisterhood group. So if anybody is listening to the podcast that's in the group now and new to it, you may go back and, if you're interested and listen to that, or if you're considering joining the group, that's another thing. Not just me, but hearing the stories of so many other women who have walked similar paths.
That's right. Yeah. That's right. And that, the podcast, we do these little survivor interviews. They're very short, but the butterfly interviews, they're not interviews, they're just stories that are within the sisterhood are actually much more, you get more of a deeper picture of what goes on inside of their lives and more of an idea of how they actually were able to extricate themselves from their relationship, which I think is encouraging and important to understand if you're kind of looking, thinking about what your options are moving forward, to be able to hear what other people have gone through and that they've actually survived and even thrived, going through the same things that you're going through. But today we want to talk about forgiveness. And I think this is I think there's going to be a lot of things to say on this subject because we're women of faith. And so forgiveness is a big deal for us, right? And then also forgiveness is a big deal because we've just spent we may have spent years and years and years and years, decades even, dealing with someone who has repetitively hurt us and done destruction to our spiritual lives, our emotional lives, sometimes our physical bodies. And yet now, and so forgiveness, it's like, forgive? What are you talking about? Like, I can forgive someone who maybe does one nasty thing, but to forgive years and years of unrepentant sin, how in the world, what does that even look like? What does it involve? Is it even possible? And yeah, and I think, I know, Daphne, you said you had come up with a whole bunch of ideas about what forgiveness is not. And maybe we could start there. Do you want to share some?
Sure.
Yeah, dig in.
Yeah. Well, so just kind of to start off, one thing that's been super important for me in my journey of healing and then just growing as a person is having really precise definitions for things that I always kind of just spouted off as rhetoric, really. So I was always just kind of told and had internalized the idea that I need to forgive. And, I hadn't really thought a whole lot about what that means, but I had definitely internalized some things about what I felt like that means. So like one of the things I felt like it meant before was that like it was something that someone had to request of me and it was something I did for them. And so it's really like, it came down to, someone demanding that, and then I could think about forgiveness, right? But it wasn't necessarily something I thought about outside of that context.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So someone would have to ask you for forgiveness for a specific thing that they had done to you, and then you would decide from there if you were going to forgive them or not.
Right. Yeah, that's kind of the framework, right? That, or at least that I grew up with, was like, someone wrongs you, like they ask for forgiveness, and then, if they ask, and then you're kind of required to give that to them. But, really thinking about that, it doesn't really tell you what forgiveness is. It seems like maybe forgiveness is some sort of restoring of the relationship, but that's really not what it is. It's, when it comes down to it, forgiveness, and kind of the definition that I have found helpful is, one part is sort of really making the decision to deliberately get rid of your negative feelings towards someone that has wronged you, really for the purpose of healing and moving forward. But sometimes that definition is hard for me too, because we can't always really control our feelings. So then kind of a second part of the definition that I've come up with that's been helpful for myself is committing to not letting those transgressions against me hinder me from moving forward in life, and committing to not having those things control my actions and my thoughts moving forward.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Which I think is, yeah, no, go ahead, Rachel. I was just going to say that's the big question though in our minds, is like, how in the world do you do that?
Right. Well, and also it goes even further than that, committing not to do the same back to them, releasing the debt that essentially they owe you, right? Because of the way that they've treated you, releasing that to God, allowing him to be the one who I guess applies vengeance. I mean, right? It says it in the Bible, like, vengeance is mine, I will repay, says the Lord. Not taking vengeance upon yourself is an act of forgiveness.
Yeah. Yeah, because you want justice so bad.
Right, exactly. The justice. It's that we all crave that. We have a desire for justice. And we can't go and seek that for ourselves by doing that the way that we've been treated back to them.
I think
it doesn't
too,
work like that.
It's like, I think I've said this elsewhere, but for me, I've felt like with the people in my life that I've had to forgive, that sometimes I feel like forgiveness kind of ebbs and flows, but I've had to let them off the hook for that justice, because, and instead what I've said in the past is let them off the hook, but then put them on God's hook. And the only problem with that is that if you're also struggling with, well, God, is there a God? Is God for me? Is he going to actually keep them on the hook, or is he just going to let them off the hook too? And, because the Bible says that God forgives too. So does that mean then that anybody can do whatever they want to anybody else? And then it's just, it's God just forgives everybody. And so it's no big deal. And so I just think that, a lot of us, then we think that way. And then we think, well, then justice is really is up to me. And I have to create that justice for myself. And when you start going down that rabbit trail, that's when I think that at least for me, I feel like that's when I lose my peace. That's when I lose my joy. Yeah. That's when I lose I miss out on feeling good about my life. And I'm just so sick of feeling, I don't anymore, but I got to the place where I was just so sick of feeling icky about my life and all of the people in it. I just wanted to be happy.
Yeah. They still had, so allowing those feelings of unforgiveness to control you means that your husband is essentially, ex-husband, still controlling you in a way. Right. And you've lived like that long enough. No, forgiveness is an act of trusting God.
Yeah. So Daphne, what do you think about that? I mean, have you come to the place, I'm curious to know if you've come to the place where you have been able to forgive your ex or other people in your life that have hurt you?
Yeah, I think so. And it kind of going back to one thing you said was, when you were focused on him, you were feeling bad. Right. And so I think that is one of the things to really consider when we're thinking about, do we need to forgive? Should we forgive? Like, what's up with that? Because I feel like a lot of times in these types of situations, people are being pressured to forgive, even by someone they were in a relationship with, or by the church, or by their families, or anything like that. Folks are pressured to forgive, right? As if that means some type of restoration of a relationship, or some type of willingness to, again, like communicate or be involved with that person. Mm-hmm. But like, really, what does that do for us, in terms of how we're feeling and dealing with the hurt and everything? So kind of really what I've come to is this place of looking at forgiveness as something that is for me. Like, it involves another person or another group of people to the extent that they did something wrong against me. But forgiveness really is me saying, okay, that can't control me moving forward. It's not even about like justice for me, because I feel like if I'm saying, hey, I'm going to forgive them so that God can give them justice, like, it's still about them. Right. And it's not about me and my commitment to moving forward in my life. So that's kind of where I've come to. And I know that a lot of people struggle with faith and what does that look like coming from these situations. And so even thinking about, okay, are we commanded to forgive? Like, what is that whole thing? What is that supposed to look like? And so, I really ultimately think that, and Bob Hamp talked about this in a video a few years ago that he released about forgiveness, where, in scripture is talking about how, if we don't forgive, then God won't forgive us. Like, it depends on how we think about it, right? Like, you talked about this picture of God, like, really as an abuser that a lot of us take on, which is like, oh, if we don't do this, then he's just going to withhold his love from us. Mm-hmm. But if we kind of change that view to be, well, maybe if we don't like forgive others, we're not enabled to experience forgiveness and healing for ourselves. That's kind of how, I see that dynamic working, and that kind of works better with my new picture of faith and who God is now.
Mm-hmm. That's really good. And building on what you said there, Daphne, in that Bob Hamp video, that's a really good video for people to watch. I wonder if we could link to it in the show notes. Mm-hmm. He talked about how you can't forgive what you don't recognize. So healing from, the trauma you've been through in your marriage means a continual acknowledgement of what's been done to you. And only then can you forgive that. You can't forgive what you don't see happened. So if my husband hurt me over, 14 years, and it was really subtle, right? It was like a subtle wearing down of who I am and all the things that I had to offer him. He was wearing away at my self-worth. He was wearing away at my personhood. And I have to be able to see that effect and how it's played out in my life before I can do the hard act of forgiving him for what he did there. And that's really hard. That's an active spiritual pursuit to be able to release him to God for justice. So it's forgiveness is not just a one-time act, I guess, is my point here. You have to keep pursuing it over time. And I'm still finding ways that I have to forgive my ex-husband.
Well, that was something I was going to ask you guys, is if there was ever a point where you felt like, okay, I really feel like I have released him and I can move on, or do you still kind of work on that here and there?
I mean, I definitely think it's a process, because there are different things that come up, like different circumstances in life that come up that show you, oh, like, I thought I was going to have this at this point. Like, I had an expectation built that my life would look like this, and it doesn't, because of this same situation. And so it like keeps coming up. Mm-hmm. But I think that, when I think about forgiveness, it's another thing what I don't think it looks like. Like, I don't think it looks like you won't continue to be hurt or have disappointment. I think it means that we're making the deliberate decision to not allow that to control us, whether it's controlling our thought patterns or our behaviors. You know, what does it look like when those things come up? And I think it's a deliberate, intentional choice. And so an example of that is like maybe, you know, so I just moved, for example. And so like I'm in an apartment by myself. A couple of years ago, I wouldn't imagine that would be my situation. So, you know, but it is, you know, what it is, that is what my reality is now. So is that disappointing? Of course. But do I allow that to control my thought patterns? And am I going to spiral now into what could have been, what should have been, and how it was all his fault? Or am I going to like embrace what my life is now and move forward in healthy ways? And so I think that's what forgiveness, that kind of continual forgiveness looks like, is continually making the choice to handle that in a healthy way. And it's not being hurt. I think that's a lot of times forgiveness is used as a weapon against people who are hurt.
Yes.
Especially in the church. It's like, oh, well, clearly you haven't forgiven. You're still hurt. And it's like, well, but no, that's two different things. You know, you can still be hurt and at the same time forgive, and at the same time not choose to be in a relationship. All those things can be true at the same time.
Yeah.
Yes. Forgiveness is not reconciliation, I think is what you just said there. And that is so misrepresented in Christian culture a lot of times. If you've forgiven, that means that you return to relationship the way it was. You've forgiven, just like, you know, you're not remembering what's been done to you, etc. And that
you give them a blank slate, clean whiteboard.
Right.
You can write your crappy graffiti all over the whiteboard all over again, because we're going to forget that you just did that.
This message was so prevalent in my mind when I was married before, that every single time, I mean, this is why I didn't see a pattern. I wasn't able to look back and say, well, this happened before, because I would feel guilty that I remembered what he had done to me before. Yeah. And it took me 14 years to finally say, you know, and some education to know what was really going on. But I felt I would feel so guilty about not forgiving him. And he would even like stonewall me for 3 days, when I knew that he had really done something wrong. And then all he had to do was ignore me for long enough, and I would feel bad, and I would feel like I needed to forgive him. These are all distorted ideas of forgiveness. Well,
and it puts the perpetrator in the victim role, because by your not forgiving them, now they are a victim of your non-forgiveness.
Right.
It's like, it's such a brain. I was going to use a swear word there, but it's such a, yeah.
Yeah. Well, and if you know anything about narcissism, that's like, being a victim is how they live their lives and who they want to be. They want to be a victim because that means they get to control you. They get to have you feel bad for them and do what that means that you do what they want you to do.
Hey there. If you're a woman of faith in a confusing and painful marriage and you want more concentrated, personalized help to deal with what you're experiencing in your life, I want to offer you the Flying Free Sisterhood. The Sisterhood is a comprehensive education and support program designed to help women like you go from crawling to flying. Here's what one of our members has to share about her own healing journey with Flying Free.
Before I signed up for Flying Free, I was excited but nervous because I was replacing Flying Free with my weekly therapist visits. I signed up for the year and saved money. After I joined, I was pleasantly surprised at the huge buffet of resources now at my fingertips. They all seemed to be tailored to my needs. I was and am committed to getting healthy, and the more I take in and participate, the more I benefit. I feel so supported, understood, accepted, and blessed to be a Flying Free member. I joined a weekly small group and we share and pray for each other as we go through Natalie's book, Is It Me? I believe that unless you've walked in our shoes, you really cannot understand. This ministry has been life-changing and continues to change my life. I'm grateful for it. My friend told me how amazing it is, and now I'm telling you. It's time. Sign up for a year. Do it for yourself. You're worth it. No regrets. God bless you.
Learn more about Flying Free and hop on the waiting list at joinflyingfree.com.
You know, I think it's important maybe that we talk more about the idea that because you forgive someone, like that's a totally separate question from whether or not the relationship can or should be restored.
Yes.
Because I think a lot of people struggle, and I definitely struggled with that idea. Like I was hesitant to forgive because I felt like that would say something about, well, maybe I was ready to be in relationship or, have other conversations that I just wasn't. But kind of when I disconnected those two ideas of forgiveness and continued relationship, that really freed me up to heal myself. Right. And so I really want to, I would say give permission. I can't give permission to anyone for anything, but I really want people to feel free to consider the option that you don't have to continue in relationship with someone that has continued to hurt you. Mm-hmm. And that is a decision you can make, and you can forgive, right? Because forgiveness for someone doesn't mean that there won't be consequences that they might experience in their lives as a result of loss of relationship with us. And again, that's not something that's like, well, they need to feel this pain. It's like, no, again, it's focusing on what do I need to do to keep myself healthy, right? Like I know I've been in this place of whatever hurt or bitterness that, like you said, Natalie, has just been making me not feel good, not be healthy. What do I need to do to get to a good place? One is acknowledging that pain and that hurt, committing to moving forward, but then also examining your life for areas where you can prevent some of that. So that's where boundaries come in.
Mm-hmm. Being self-controlled instead of being controlled by other people, and choosing what you will and will not allow, what kind of behavior you will and will not tolerate in your life. And if someone is hurting you, you are allowed to make the decision to protect yourself. You do not have to continue that just because you are married to them. In fact, if you're married to them, that increases their responsibility and accountability for hurting you even more, because they promised when they married you that they would protect you, that they would be alongside you, that they would cherish you. And if they're continually breaking that vow, then that's something to think about.
Right. I think there's in the Flying Higher group, which is a group that I'm doing, and you guys are both in that, right? You guys are both in that.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. It's for divorced women. We just did a lesson on unconditional love. And I think this kind of goes along with that, because there's a lot of confusion about what unconditional love is. I know I've been very confused about that. Mm-hmm. And unconditional love and forgiveness, I mean, think about it. Forgiveness is really an act of love, right? It's an act of unconditional love. And we believe that unconditional love means the same thing that forgiveness means. It means that I'm giving you a carte blanche to do whatever you want to do to me, and I will just love you. And what does loving someone unconditionally mean? It means, letting them run all over you. It means still giving them dinner and doing their laundry and giving them sex and just saying, hey, I love you unconditionally. You can beat me up. You can call me names, and I'm just going to love on you like crazy. That's absolutely insanity. Okay. That is not unconditional love at all. And so I think trying to parse out what the difference is between what unconditional love actually is. And one of the breakthroughs that I recently had is I'm estranged from my immediate my family of origin. And one of the looping thoughts that I kept having every time I would think about them is they don't care, they don't love me, and they don't care. Okay. And I was talking about this with a coach, and she helped me to see, she's like, what could you think instead of they don't care? Because the result in my life was just misery. Okay. Yeah. And I didn't want to feel miserable about that anymore. I actually wanted to feel unconditional love for my family members, even though we had no contact with each other. And I believe that it was possible to feel that unconditional love, because our feelings are something that we have. It's not something that other people have to feel. We make our own. We have our own universe, and we feel our own feelings within that universe. And I wanted to feel love for them, and I wanted to feel connected to them, even though we were not connected physically. And the thought that she helped me come up with whenever my brain says they don't care is, I care. And that has been transformative for me. So my focus again is not on them and what they're doing and what they're offering the world, but rather back on me again, because I can only change me, right? And it's back on it's about me. And I do care. So whenever my brain says, oh, they don't care, and I start thinking about the things that they did that hurt me, I stop and I go, no, but you know what? I care. I care about them. I care. And I not only care about them, but unconditional love means we have unconditional love for ourselves, so that when we make mistakes, we still can hold space for ourselves and love ourselves and take care of ourselves and grow and develop into the people that we're meant to be, to our full potential, and be happy as we possibly can be in a world where all the other humans are doing whatever they want to do. And it's not necessarily things that make us feel comfortable.
That is so good. Yeah. That is so good. The way that it's been helpful for me to think about it, unconditional love, is wanting the best for someone no matter what. And sometimes the best for someone means not allowing them to hurt me anymore, because that's, if I'm just continually providing, them an opportunity to sin against me, that's not good for them or me, of course. Right. So it can be like allowing someone to face the consequences, to sow what they've reaped, or to reap what they've sowed, excuse me, it can be really loving for them to face the consequences of their own behavior. Filing for divorce, as crazy as it sounds, from my husband was an act of love, because I love him too much to allow him to continue in the ways that he's been treating me any longer, because that is not good for him and it's not good for me.
Well, and it sets such a loving example too to everyone around you, even though they might not see it as loving. It shows the world that there are consequences for wrong behavior, and that we all have our own personal power, that we can all take the responsibility that God has given to us, which is simply to take care of ourselves and to offer all of our potential into the world, to take that on ourselves and to let go of control of all of the other people, including the people that we're closest to, because they get to make their own choices for their own lives. And when they make those choices, there are going to be natural consequences to that.
Yeah. I find it funny how a lot of these terms, like, the forgiveness and unconditional love, like it's, again, they're weaponized, right? Yeah. And they're kind of thrown out to make people feel like they have to relate to someone else in a certain type of way. So I feel like I'm just in the place where I'm just going back to the beginning and asking, why do I need to do this? Why do I feel like it's important to me to have unconditional love? What is that? Is that even a thing? What are people doing when they're saying that and using those terms, And I think, like, I don't remember if it was Rachel or Natalie, one of you was saying, maybe it was Rachel that was like, is unconditional love now a license for you to treat me however you want because I can't put conditions on our interactions? So I'm just kind of like, even just backing up and looking at things from this bird's eye view of, what does this even mean? Is this even important? And I think even when you're talking about forgiveness, I, again, want to allow people to feel the freedom to ask the questions of, what does this mean? What does this look like? I feel like, especially in the church, we're told what things mean and what things look like, and we never question them, and we're never allowed to question them.
Yeah.
So when you kind of start dipping your toe into the water of thinking about things differently, you can feel guilt and shame, like, oh, am I just not wanting to forgive? Am I not wanting to be like Jesus? But, I just want to remind people, like, there's plenty of like Bible believing, seminary educated theologians that believe different things.
Right.
Right. So it's okay to step out and ask questions about what you've always believed, especially when you see that the fruit of what you're believing in your life is like bitterness and pain and, like physical ailments. Like when that's the fruit of your beliefs, like in your life, it's okay to step back and say, like, I don't think this is right.
Right.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, that's such a good point. And I don't think that our religious environments necessarily offer that space for people to wrestle with those kinds of things. They're like, no, this is the way it is. This is how we say it is. And you either buy into it and you can be part of our club. But if you're going to wrestle with it, and if you're going to read authors that are outside of our designated, white list of authors, then you can just like be gone with you, because you're just a rebel and whatever.
Absolutely. And it, kind of goes back to what is their goal in doing that? Is it control? Is it that, I think another thing is we just don't, in general, we don't deal with emotions well in
the
society,
church.
in the church, but in society at large either. We're not really taught emotional intelligence. So, and it's especially in the church, the scripture, the heart is deceitful. So that means emotions are bad. And so if you're feeling angry or sad, stop it. Right.
Yep. That's about it.
Right. Exactly. Stop it, because God is good. Right. But man, I just imagine a theology where like God can handle us being sad and disappointed.
Yep. Almost like he created us like that with the capacity for those emotions. Right.
Right. Yeah.
Okay. Well, ladies, did we solve this problem for the whole world now? This is like the definitive guide on forgiveness. I don't think so, but I hope
I thought so. I thought we did a great job, and that was it.
I think this gave a lot of food for thought for people, because here's the thing. If you're listening, you're going to have to go and wrestle with all this stuff on your own. This is not easy stuff, and it's not like this overnight epiphany. No, I mean, it could be, it could be, there could be some major breakthroughs in your life, especially if you've already done some thinking about this, and that, someone could have said something in today's episode that's just like the light bulb goes on and then it's all clear for you. I think that happens, but I think more often it's part of a process, and it's the light goes on, not suddenly, but it slowly gets brighter and brighter, and you slowly start to feel yourself releasing that burden of the person that hurt you. Yeah. And not releasing that they're not a burden, but the pain that they've caused you is a huge burden that you carry around. And here's the thing about other people that hurt us. They move on with their lives and they don't care. They're not thinking at all about the devastation that they've left behind. Now, we want to think that, well, if they could just get it and if they could just see it, then I would feel so much better and I'd be able to forgive them. If they would just say they're sorry and really get, instead of I'm sorry, but if they could really just articulate all the things that they did to me, then I could forgive them and move on. No, because if we're depending on them to understand us and to have a meeting of the minds, then first of all, that's never going to happen. But secondly, we're giving all of our power for our well-being into the hands of another person. And that's the opposite of what we want to be doing as we're getting our badass on and healing and, becoming adult women who have a lot to offer to this world. So anyway,
I think that, sorry, just
no,
one
I'm
last
done.
thing to
Go ahead.
Just to summarize kind of where I am with forgiveness, I think in general, it's a tool that can help us learn to really cope with the difficulty of life in a healthy way. Like you said, in a way where we're in a position to bring our full selves and gifts to the world to benefit others.
Yeah. And one final thought I want to add is that if forgiveness feels overwhelming, that's okay. I would just encourage women to release that overwhelmed feeling, that mountain that feels insurmountable to the Lord, and ask Him to help us to forgive. And this is something I've had to practice because the hurt is so deep, was so deep. But I just want to just testify to what He's done in my life. Last fall, I got remarried. And the day before I got married, my ex-mother-in-law sent me a nasty text message. And I was so hurt. I was sitting there crying. I had been having such a great day. I was excited, and I didn't know what to do. I was instantly taken back to this place where I was, so filled with shame and not being good enough and all that. But I felt the sudden clarity of what I needed to do. And I sent her a text message back just saying that I loved her, and that was it. And then I blocked her. So she couldn't respond, and I didn't have to hear from her again. And that was something that I never would have thought that I would have been able to do. And that's the power of the Holy Spirit when you allow Him to work in your life and you surrender that pain and ask for His help to do what we've been called to do as Christians, which is to forgive. But it's not just a simple thing. It's just that we do once. It's an ongoing process, like we've talked about. So that is, all the glory to God for that empowerment to be able to do that.
That's beautiful, because you know what? In that moment, you were showing love was spilling out of you for three people. It was spilling out of you for yourself. It was spilling out of you for that woman right where she's at in her life. And it was spilling out of you for God, who gave you the power to do that. I think that's a perfect way to end this whole episode, actually, with that story. But actually do want to end it with one more little thing, though, that has nothing to do with forgiveness. It has to do with this podcast and getting it into the I was going to say the earballs, but the eardrums, the eardrums of other women. So I didn't know this. I've been doing this now it's been a year and a half, and I didn't really realize this because I'm not a tech person, but I've become aware that when people leave ratings and reviews on iTunes, apparently iTunes looks at that and goes, oh, people like this podcast. So maybe if these people like it, more people will like it. And then they start showing it. It starts showing up in people's podcast feeds as, if you like this one, you might like this one. And so one of the ways that you can actually help help other women become aware that this podcast is available to them is by going to iTunes, finding the Flying Free podcast, and leaving. You can either do it on your app if you have an app on your phone, or you can do it online too, and leave a rating and a review, and just let people know what you think. And we read those also, and we read those, and we love reading them because they are very encouraging, and they also give us feedback as far as what it is about this podcast that you like. It helps us to rally and go, okay, we want to give people more of this because this is what they're enjoying and this is what they're benefiting from. So give us your feedback, please. And you can leave a rating and review anonymously. You can pick any name you want to. You don't have to show up as your own name. I know some people are sensitive about that. So anyway, we would really appreciate that. And we always feature someone's review on the website when we post a new podcast. And that's kind of fun too. So thank you so much for listening. Thank you, Daphne and Rachel, for joining me today. And that's it. Until next time, fly free.